I do think we see a snapback now with MAGA MAHA rethinking some of this stuff when it comes to make America healthy again and make America great again. And I know you've been thinking about this because, certainly there's always been conservative people, traditionally religious people who know, no, this is ridiculous. There's some things that your grandmother taught you that don't change over time because you're a human being. There's some truths that, stand the test of time. There's always been people who, pass down, like our teachers, the great books and read them and say, no, there's still a lot of truth here. And if we heed this wisdom, we might avoid some of the problems today. But tell me a little bit about what you see in this new movement that sort of is striking against this idea.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned Robert Kennedy Jr. and MAHA. I mean, I've been interested in this a long time. Personally, I sometimes tell my friends I'm paleo, and they think they mean that I'm talking about being a paleo conservative. What I mean is I'm on the paleo diet or lifestyle, which just means living according to the way human beings have lived for thousands of years, recognizing that there's a lot of aspects of modern society that are not good for us. We lived for thousands of years without artificial light, without processed foods, without being sedentary. We're designed to move around, to get sunlight, to get exercise, to eat natural whole foods. So I've been interested in this for a long time, and I'm very gratified to see Secretary Kennedy now taking the lead on this, trying to focus on getting rid of processed foods and artificial, what is that, corn-based sweeteners and all that artificial crap
Seed
that's in our
oils.
food, and excessive prescriptions of pharmaceuticals and all this. And so here's to your question. What's interesting is there's a direct connection between the political and the sort of individual side of health, bodily health and political health. And the same mistake was made. So around the middle of the 20th century, we started to see what were called diseases of civilization. People were getting obese. People were being too sedentary. People were spending too much time inside. They weren't getting exercise. And they were eating a lot of processed, artificially prepared foods. And it was bad for us. And we started seeing obesity and diabetes and coronary heart disease and all the things that go with the modern lifestyle. The problem was our scientific experts identified the wrong culprit. They thought that the problem was the foods that people had been eating for thousands of years, and they identified things like meat and butter and eggs as the culprits, and said, we need to eat more refined processed carbs. And what's interesting is one of the big culprits in this was a guy named George McGovern, Democratic nominee, candidate for president in 1972, was defeated by Nixon in an overwhelming landslide. But in 1977, he headed a select committee on health and nutrition and was one of the people that pushed the food pyramid, which was to say, get rid of all the natural foods we've been eating, and you should eat mostly refined, processed grains and carbs. And it's very interesting that this rejection of nature and what's naturally good for us is the same mistake. My joke is the administrative state is the food pyramid of politics. It gets everything exactly upside down. And the idea that science can give us new, better things, that the rule of the expert class will give us new artificial processed happiness and new artificial processed foods, and the experts can tell us what to do. And the rejection of natural foods went along with the rejection of natural rights. I'm being a little bit glib, and it's a little bit more serious than that, and it's a little bit more subtle. But the idea is the same, right? We rejected natural rights, which is an idea that had gone back for a long time. The idea that all human beings are naturally and equally members of the same species is an idea that goes all the way back to Plato and Aristotle. And we rejected that just like we rejected our natural diet. And there's an interesting parallel there. And I don't want to make too much of it, but the self-appointed expert class has done a lot of damage to our physical health and a lot of damage to our political health.
Well, I like this parallel. I think this parallel is pretty good. I think we should stick with it because it makes a lot of sense, and it makes things, I think, clear because, and also it helps, I think it helps different people understand the problem that we're in because, this big, beautiful coalition we have. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are drawn first to MAHA. They may not as been, they weren't as political, but COVID and other things, right, pushed the kind of MAHA moms to RFK and to end up supporting Donald Trump. But the food pyramid, I mean, let's zoom in on that a little bit. So what you're saying is 1950s, like post World War II, is really that's when the idea of the elites started. Like people start using the word elite a lot, and experts. We're gonna get a meritocratic system. We're gonna have all these elites go to fancy schools. And they're gonna tell us what to do. And here's what they came up with, right? I mean, they came up with this pyramid that we were all supposed to. We all know. Everyone of a certain age knows. And you're saying George McGovern, the lefty loser, who got trounced by Nixon, is actually the one promoting this. At the real base of this pyramid is the idea of the experts that, oh, it's so great that we can make processed food now, the 1950s on en masse, and we can mass produce bags of Doritos, et cetera, and that we should actually be eating these refined carbs instead of the stuff that you'd have down on the farm. I mean, it's wild that we even have to have this conversation now, because it feels like so many people have broken through the other side. And I believe they have, even the FDA has changed. Is that right?
Yeah, they've moved to something called the food plate, which is a little bit less egregious than this. It doesn't emphasize processed carbs quite as much. It's a little bit better, but it still hasn't fixed the problem. And I think Secretary Kennedy, will come up with something soon, I hope, to completely get rid of the food plate as well as the food pyramid and push the idea that natural foods that we've been eating for thousands of years should be the central focus. I mean, let me say something a little bit about the younger people on the right who are attracted to the idea of physical health, right? And so interested, as you say, in the MAHA movement, interested in weightlifting, interested in being healthy, interested in eating natural foods. A lot of those same people, I think, might be open to this idea now that the experts told you that the founding was wrong, that natural rights was wrong, that equality is wrong. Those are the same people who've been telling you to eat processed food, right? Mm-hmm. So don't believe them, right? Just like people made a mistake identifying the wrong culprit in the 70s and 80s with the food pyramid, people have made a mistake identifying the culprit of our modern atheism and relativism and hedonism and nihilism, and they think that traces back to the founding fathers. And it's the same error of identifying the wrong culprit. And the answer, I think, is the same, that we should have a political society that's in conformity with human nature, and that's exactly what the founders were trying to do. And we should have a diet and a lifestyle that's in conformity with human nature. And that's what I think a lot of people are recognizing. And so it's as I say, I'm simplifying a little bit, but there's a lot of truth in this, and I think it's an interesting parallel to make people aware of.